My name is Nicole Shanks, and my study was a needs assessment of nutrition education in Colorado schools. So we're going to start with the introduction. So it is common knowledge that the United States has a growing epidemic of adults who are overweight or obese. However, the obesity rate for children and adolescents who are between 2 years and 19 years of age is even more staggering. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 17% of children and adolescents within this age group are either overweight or obese. So this data comes from the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It is the 2011 percentage of obese high school students. So this study that I conducted takes place in Colorado, so let's go ahead and look at that. And it shows that 7% of high school students within Colorado are obese. Definitely, Colorado is not one of the darker states. It has a higher obesity rate, but it is definitely not it's definitely not low, or as low as one would anticipate. This information came from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey conducted in 2011. So, schools promote healthy eating behavior. According to the CDC, schools have a major impact in the development of children. Children between the ages of 5 and 17 spend roughly 6 hours per day for 13 years attending school. School-based nutrition education has the ability to reach the majority of youth and educate them on healthy eating behaviors. The school environment is a major contributing factor in the development of lifetime dietary habits. Not only is it so because it plays a substantial role in feeding children, but can provide the opportunity for nutrition education programs. These nutrition education programs have been shown to be effective means for creating positive attitudes toward food, changing current eating habits, and teaching students the link between diet and health. In 2010, the Colorado State Board of Education sought to combat the increasing number of obese and overweight children within Colorado. They revised Colorado's physical education standards to an overall wellness, health, physical activity, nutrition, a very comprehensive standard group, which is called Comprehensive Health and Physical Education Standards, which address the skills students need to make healthy choices. These new standards include nutrition education for pre-kindergarten through high school students. And to just give you some background, Colorado academic standards are comprised of all the Colorado education standards. These standards are defined as guidelines for each grade level for any administered curricula. This helps teachers identify or create lesson plans. The purpose of this study was to survey nutrition educators on the resources, materials, and curriculum they need to implement the comprehensive health and physical education standards. The research questions included: where are schools and districts in the implementation process? What nutrition education materials and resources are currently being used? What curricular and non-curricular resources do school personnel need for comprehensive health and physical education standard implementation? For what individuals or groups do school personnel feel they need support? And finally, what preferences do educators have for curricular resources? So looking at prior work, the first one, so previous work by Lambert et al., concluded that individuals that hold different positions within education have differing viewpoints on policy implementation. This means the difference between teachers or administrators, principals, food service directors. Therefore, using this knowledge for my study, I chose to sample not just teachers, but many different individuals in different roles in the education system. So the majority of prior research played a role in informing my survey development and guiding my line of questioning. Data from past studies indicate that educators feel they have several barriers to overcome in order to implement nutrition education programs. Many educators do not feel they have the curriculum or non-curriculum resources needed for nutrition education. Previously identified barriers to the implementation of nutrition education included time, administrative support, nutrition education materials, and nutrition training, or what you would call teacher professional development. So, moving on to the methods. Okay. So, my study was a survey, and so starting with the participants, the study used participants that included various types of school personnel who have a key role in nutrition education within Colorado schools and school districts. So then moving on to survey development is the steps involved in the development of my survey tool included preparation of my initial draft, review, revision, and the development of the final questionnaire, which was administered online via Qualtrics. The questions for the first draft were informed by key informant interviews and the lit review, but these key informant interviews were held with teachers, district wellness coordinators, and other nutrition educators. The survey draft was then reviewed by experts that included CSU faculty or professor in the food science and human nutrition department, as well as in the education department. The survey was also reviewed by members of the target audience. These reviews served as a validity measure and clarified understanding of each question. The final survey was a web-based, self-reported, multiple-choice and short answer survey. It consisted of 5 sections that contained 21 to 23 items in total. So depending on a participant's responses is how they would answer 21 or 23 questions throughout the survey. So analysis of the survey was fairly simple. All data was stored and analyzed in Qualtrics, and so it was stored and analyzed. Okay, data from each question was analyzed just using very simple descriptive statistics, including frequencies and means. Moving on to the results. So our first research question was, where are schools and districts in the implementation process? Well, as you can see, a little less than half of school districts within Colorado were in the process of transitioning and moving toward the implementation of the comprehensive health and physical education standards. 24% of districts have already implemented the standards, and 21% of districts are in the process of learning and becoming aware of what these standards include. So, moving over to the transition plan, and if they specifically address the nutrition standards. So 54% of respondents reported that their district's transition plan addresses nutrition, as opposed to the 7% of district transition plans that do not address nutrition-related standards. My next research question was, what nutrition education materials and resources are currently being used? So the majority of respondents, or 80%, were currently teaching nutrition throughout the school year at some point. And 79% of respondents identified access to quality curriculum and instructional resources as a possible barrier to the successful implementation of the comprehensive health and physical education standards. So they were questioned as to how they find education materials and what materials they are currently using for nutrition education. So educators responsible for nutrition curriculum selection identified using nutrition education materials from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and this included materials MyPlate and MyPyramid materials. The other resources identified by at least 3 respondents included HealthSmart, the Glenclo Health Textbook, NFL Play 60, HealthTeacher.com, Spark People, and materials from the American Dairy Association and Dairy Council. So if you look at the pie chart, you can see where nutrition education materials are being accessed by teachers, and the big majority is 41% are accessing nutrition education materials online. So this table addresses the third research question, which was what curricular and non-curricular resources do school personnel need for the comprehensive health and physical education standard implementation? And from what individuals or groups do school personnel feel they need the most support? This table summarizes the resources, support, motivation educators reported needing for successful implementation. As you can see, educators identified quality curriculum and instructional resources, time, professional development, and access to funding as resources needed to effectively implement the new standards. Educators reported that the greatest internal motivation, or just motivation in general, to teach nutrition was their belief that nutrition is important for student development. Both of these findings are consistent with the prior research discussed in the Lit Review. However, which is not consistent is that previous research respondents identified district-level support, or what is not consistent is that these respondents, my respondents, identified district-level support as the most important support educators need, as opposed to administrative support. So Colorado educators are looking for support from the district level and not just a school administration level. The next question is, what preferences do educators have for curricular resources? Again, since respondents identified there was a lack of quality curriculum and resources, they were questioned as to what characteristics are important for them for selecting education materials. So engaging, age appropriateness, and evidence-based were the three primary features they look for when they select nutrition education materials. Respondents were also questioned about the type of curricular materials they look. That's what they look for. And then half of the respondents they looked for complete lesson plans that include assessment tools, identification of health standards, and learning objectives. 49% of respondents sought interdisciplinary lesson plans that concurrently address nutrition and other content standards. Moving on to the discussion. So this study identified the resources, materials, and curriculum educators need to implement the comprehensive health and physical education standards. The majority of nutrition educators surveyed currently teach nutrition in their classrooms, and more than half of respondents are either in the process of implementation or have fully implemented the standards. Throughout the process of implementation, educators feel they need support from both their school districts and school administrators. As in other studies, respondents identified the need for more time, quality curriculum materials, professional development for teachers, and money to successfully implement the standards. So the information obtained from this needs assessment will guide efforts by school districts and administrators across the state of Colorado in their support of educators through this implementation process and future development of curricular and non-curricular resources. Based on survey responses, the lack of nutrition education resources needs to be filled with materials that are engaging, age-appropriate, and evidence-based, and accessible online, because that's where majority of respondents report accessing information. Similar to other studies, additional training for educators or professional development was identified as a needed non-curricular resource for comprehensive health and physical education standard implementation. Therefore, future nutrition and comprehensive health and physical education specific professional development is needed to aid teachers in their ability to implement nutrition standards.